And hello there for another episode of the Acolyte discussion show, which we are doing every week, and I speak to a different guest each episode so we get a nice wide variety of perspectives. Last week I had Dave, this week I've got Maff, and both of those two and myself make up Clone Wars Conversations, so if you're new to the feed or you're new to my YouTube channel or wherever you're listening or watching this, and myself, Maff and Dave, we go through every episode of the Clone Wars, and we do them in little batches, and we do that every month. So every month you can get an episode of Clone Wars Conversations. They're normally between 1 and 2 hours. We delve deep in those, and we've also done Star Wars Rebels as well. We did all that in 2023. But in this episode, we've got a lot of cool stuff coming up. Have the witches broken the canon, as everyone else is yelling about on the internet? Was this episode any good? Because it's the lowest rated Star Wars episode, I think, of anything ever. And have the Sith species become canon? I think I'm the only person on the internet who thinks that, but we'll find out. We'll delve into those shortly. But before we do that, I'm going to introduce Maff, although I did kind of already introduce him. Maff, hello there. We've already been talking for like half an hour before pressing record, so it's one of those talking about all the Star Wars games, well, Outlaws coming out and some of the comics and things like that. But with Acolyte, before we delve into our thoughts on episode 3, Destiny, the flashback episode, or likely the first of 2 flashback episodes, before watching the Acolyte, how excited were you? And then also, what was your experience with the 2-episode premiere?
Excited, yeah. It's more Star Wars. At the moment, I'm on a thing of, taking in more and more Star Wars. Doing it, we did Rebels, now we're doing the Clone Wars. We've got Bad Batch and other things like that coming up. But also excited because this is stuff we don't know, and I keep hearing people saying, we want more Star Wars, but we don't want the Star Wars saga count. Well, you haven't got Skywalkers here. It's all new stuff. We don't really know anything about it. Just enjoy it. And I don't know. I think they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. They can't win. And that. The first 2 episodes, I think it kicked off quite well. I quite enjoyed it. It set a lot of groundwork off. Little teasers, little things. Yeah, I did kind of guess, it didn't kind of take long for them to show that there was twins there anyway, but kind of as they came on, I thought, I think they could be twins or something like that. It doesn't seem to be like a Moon Knight thing. I don't think it wouldn't fit. But I feel that they've kind of they've got the story and they've gone, right, here we go. Let's not start trying to jazz up and try to explain where the Wookiees come from, who's the species, who's that, let's just get into it. And again, from little bits that I have read, people are still like, oh, you're not explaining things, or, oh, you're taking too late, you can't win. I'm enjoying them though. I don't really care. They can keep doing this. I'm happy. More Star Wars, give me it.
It's great, and because I'll clarify as well to our listeners, and because Maff has not watched all of the Clone Wars, if there are any Clone Wars connections from season 5 and onwards, and the finale of season 4, I won't be mentioning that because I don't want to spoil for Maff. I don't think there really are. There's some connections to witches and stuff, but you already know of the witches of Dathomir because of prior Clone Wars episodes and because of Ahsoka. So Maff you've seen all the live action series, you've played Fallen Order and Survivor, and you've watched all of Rebels, and we're almost finished with season 4 of the Clone Wars. So you've watched almost all, by the end of sort of this year, maybe early next year, you'll have watched pretty much all main air quote Star Wars content that most people have seen, aside from Bad Batch, but obviously we'll delve into that and Tales of the Jedi and Empire and etc. But no, it's one of those, because like I enjoyed the first 2 episodes. I didn't think they were phenomenal, but I did enjoy them. I thought they were good, just standard good. So did Megan, and Megan is generally much more of a harsher critic than I am. I thought this episode was probably worse than the first 2. And I think there are some issues with this episode. It's definitely not perfect, but I know that you said about people online a bit, and I was really surprised. I knew there's a percentage of the air quotes fandom, I hasten to call them that, who just hate on everything Star Wars. And apart from, weirdly enough, unless it's Andor, they just hate on everything. And it's like, Ahsoka wasn't the perfect show, nor was Kenobi, nor was Book of Boba Fett, nor was Mandalorian Series 3. But I don't think that any of them were overtly awful. I think Boba Fett had its weak moments and Kenobi was a bit misguided, but it wasn't like, I wasn't watching them and going, oh my God, what a drag. I never felt that. I felt that with some Clone Wars episodes, And I've even felt that with the odd Rebels episode and the odd Bad Batch episode. I felt that a lot about Resistance, which is why I'm not bloody watching that again. If you want to watch that, we're not doing podcasts on it. You can go and do it yourself. Oh, gosh. I think if you watched a couple of episodes, you'd be like, actually, probably not. But with you on that.
Can I just... Do you think maybe, though, with Andor, you've got a character that you can relate to a bit more than a Force user. So maybe people could relate to that and think, yeah, if we were in that situation, we can see... I mean, it's a story that we do and we don't kind of know, because we know the idea of Andor and kind of where he ends up to being. But he's, in a way, he's a bit more relatable. Whereas you start adding Force users, then sometimes it's like, well, why don't you just use the Force all the time to get what you want?
It's a good point.
Maybe that's why people are like, oh, they're not doing it right. But there isn't, it's science fiction. It can be whatever it wants to be at the end of the day. You're never going to have people 100% behind it. Someone's always, and again, you're always going to have haters.
Yeah, I mean, with Andor, it's weird because there are people who dislike Andor. In fact, there's a couple of people in Comics Emotion who aren't that fussed by it. There's certain people who say it's boring. And I'm like, I disagree. Yeah, I was going to say, I think the problem is with Andor is so unfathomably good. I don't really understand how anyone could watch the whole thing and not enjoy it, apart from if they are... I don't want to make it sound like if you dislike Andor, you have a low attention span. But you know what I mean? It's like, it's a bit of a thinker. It takes its time. But regarding the writing and the performance, it's airtight. And I think that's the problem, is that even if you overtly hate Star Wars, it's so hard to critique. So it kind of gets a pass.
Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was good because it was very story driven. Yeah. Yes, there was fantasy there, but we didn't see dragons until a couple of seasons in, really.
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5, I think.
Andor was very much the same. It's very much kind of, if you don't have a good story, you haven't got lightsabers and Force users to be able to kind of jazz things up and distract it.
It's a good point.
It's got to be the acting. I mean, we had the one with the heist, and we even mentioned it now, that crunch is just like
a boy.
But so well written, and I think we only have 1.5 episodes with Nemik. Is it Nemik?
Yeah, well, no, he's in. Yeah, because I think there's the 3-episode arc, isn't there? And the crunch happens in the 3rd, and the second one he's fully in it. But I think the first one, he's
the first one he's a little bit, and then
I think you're right. 1.5 is probably about right. Yeah, but
it's a very short amount of time you've got with him. But that crunch, it's not quite what happens. No spoilers, but something happens in Rebels. It's not quite that.
No.
But it's along the lines. It just kind of get you, oh, what have you just done? Now, I'm not sure whether we're going to get this here, but I think, again, that's possibly because Andor character is a little bit more relatable, whereas Force users, you can kind of think, when we had Tobin and she couldn't penetrate the force fielded puzzle, and that he had to willingly take his own life, and that. So you sometimes have that power line of people who, she wanted to kill him, but she couldn't do that because he was obviously so heightened in that was it the Barash Vow? It was
he was doing the Barash Vow, but he was doing some sort of weird meditation-y thing with a force field that I think we saw it in the 2017 Vader comics, which you've read. I think it because when Kirak Filler's doing it, he has got stuff loosely floating around him, but I don't know if there's an overt force shield. But I know that in Legends, force shielding was massive. Like when the Jedi and Sith used to fight each other, they had to throw up a force shield to stop lightning hitting them and to prevent force pushes and stuff like that. And there's a little bit of it in here when Mother Aniseya, when she's trying to show the twins about just before the ascension and stuff, and she tries to show, and she does a force push. Yeah. When she throws up a force shield, and she says, so there is some legendsy stuff there, and I think one of the reasons it's coming in more now is because the Jedi of the prequels have no need to put up a Force shield because in their minds there's no real other Force users that can possibly confront them.
That's always the issue with the Jedi. They are very much kind of
my way or the highway.
Yeah, we're the best. No one can touch us, and that's always their downfall, isn't it? It comes down to where they not stubborn. They're arrogant. That's the issue with the Jedi. They're too arrogant. They think that because they're so powerful, no one else can be as powerful as them. But realistically, the Sith are more powerful because they're willing to tap into something that the Jedi won't go past.
Agreed.
We've seen it in Clone Wars with Anakin. There's times when Anakin gets more results by bending the rules a little bit. And I don't think he'll ever turn into a villain. But it's a shame there isn't a way people can again, it's sci-fi, but it's a shame there's not a way they could have someone who kind of walks both paths to kind of, to be able to keep the balance. You would have to walk both paths, and they just seem to be either one or the other.
Yeah, it's a common sort of discussion because in Legends there was I don't know if it's an official term, but there was a term that was thrown around that people get very animated about. But then again, people get animated about everything with Star Wars these days. But it's a term called the Grey Jedi, and it's someone who leaves the Order and uses a bit of dark side stuff, but isn't overtly evil. Some people said Starkiller from The Force Unleashed, he kind of could be considered like a Grey Jedi in some respects at certain points in his life. And so that's kind of what you're talking about. But I think in the era of the Republic, so about 1,000 years before the Skywalker saga, in that period, because the Jedi beat the Sith, or so they think, they beat the Sith, and then it's just them who are the main Force users, bar a few little sects. They're basically like, well, balance is good. Balance is the light side. You touch the dark, you're bad. My way or the highway. So there's not really a need for Grey Jedi or, Force users that can tap into both. But I think that as we go further back in the canon, I think eventually literature or something will probably go in there, or there'll be a movie trilogy. I think they're trying to get a movie trilogy sorted for the Old Republic to kind of kickstart a new era. So once they've done that, I think it will open up a lot more, and then there will be kind of people, because there's going to be war. The Jedi Sith Wars is such a major part of the canon, and I suspect that Disney, Lucasfilm are holding on to that, and they're waiting before delving into that. It's going to be a very big thing. And I think there's going to be a lot of Force users who were either part of the Sith or were part of the Jedi, and then they leave one of the respective orders, but then don't want to join the other one. And so there's probably going to be quite a few sort of nomads, which I mean, in the Star Wars Visions, the first release, the duel with the Ronin, although he's an ex-Sith, he is more kind of closer to that idea.
Yeah, I mean that if people haven't watched that, go find that on Disney. Phenomenal. It's probably one of the very, very up there as one of the best bits of Star Wars I've seen. That if you like Star Wars and you like kind of Ronin, samurai stuff, go watch it because you will love it. It's brilliant.
It's only 15 minutes, even if you don't watch the rest of them. It's one of the best animated things I've ever seen in my life. It's just phenomenal. But delving into this episode, so obviously it's all a flashback. It's 16 years. Acolyte. It's 16 years prior to the story that we've seen so far in the premiere. So it's on the planet of Brendok, and basically you've got Mother Coril, who's a Zabrak, same species as Maul. Well, technically Maul is a Dathomirian Zabrak, and she's a Zabrak from somewhere else, because female Zabraks from Dathomir seem to not have horns, and they become Night Sisters for the most part. But Zabraks from the rest of the galaxy have the horns and stuff. So she's a Zabrak, and then you've got Mother Aniseya, who's played by Jodie Turner-Smith, who I think is a standout. I think she's phenomenal in this. I think her acting is amazing. I think her character's compelling. I really am intrigued by her. I want to see more. And she has that quote of, "The thread is not your power to wield." And that's becoming more of a common kind of phrase. Like Luke in The Last Jedi kind of says, the Force isn't a power the Jedi get to use. It's not quite like that. And then in Phase 2 of the High Republic, which there's a cult called the Path of the Open Hand, and they are against using the Force. so they try and stop the Jedi using the Force, and they believe that anyone who uses the Force corrupts the Force and prevents it from naturally being able to be used somewhere else. And the mother of that, she says things along those lines. I think she says the Force is not your power to wield or something like that. So these kinds of ideologies have been around for a while. So you've got that idea, then there's the Ascension ceremony, and obviously we meet the twins when they're younger. There's the talk of Immaculate conception, or maybe quite not as immaculate, between Mother Aniseya and Corel. Jedi show up, bit of conversations and stuff, things like that happen, and there's a bit more talking, bit more stuff, and then the event happens. We only see from Osha's perspective of May setting fire to the door, and then she kind of escapes, and then everyone's seemingly just kind of dead, and then Sol saves her, and then that's kind of it. So that's the loose, we'll delve deeper into certain parts of that. But just as a whole, it's from the start. So as this episode kind of kicked off, we've got the twins and the flashbacks and stuff. How did you feel about that? And how did you feel about flashbacks in general? Because I know Tonya, who I've got on next week, hates flashbacks. So I wondered what you feel about it.
Because that next week could be the second part of the flashback, I'm guessing. I didn't mind it, actually. Sometimes flashbacks, I don't like it when they kind of do a little bit of a flashback and then go back to it and then do a bit. It felt like we've done a big setup. We're going to go back now and show you what happened, what this big event that they kind of keep leading to. The Jedi are thinking, we're sure we did the right thing, but did you? And it just kind of got straight into it. There's, it was quite interesting. The thing that I hardest was trying to see Osha and May and keep trying to work out exactly which were which.
Yeah, I kept getting confused.
Because the only because there were a part with like the weird hummingbird thing that she had, and like then you could see her kind of like she was force choking it, and then she kind of stopped, and then May comes along, and May kind of does that, and you're thinking, whoa, wait a minute. One of you looks like you've been a little bit, grown up more of the evil one, but both of you kind of, but you're kids.
Yeah.
So I guess the toying and playing around with the powers and trying to work out. But May's very much kind of, I don't know, she seemed very scared of doing this ascension. And she kind of, put a point across several times, and she's like, no, this is what you got to do. And she's like, and
I think it's the other way around, actually.
Also, no, May want.
I keep, to be fair, I've seen this episode twice, and I keep getting it confused. And I wrote it down, and I'm like, "Who's who again?" And I'm like, "Okay, so
no.
May is the air quotes bad one, and Osha or Varosha is the air quotes good one."
Yeah, that's it. Sorry, yes, that. So the good one, yeah, she was very much against it, whereas the other one, it was like she'd bought into it more. And that May's kind of bought into this. This is what Mum is. This is what we've got to do. And Osha is a bit more kind of. There's a big world out there, and I want to see more than that. And you see little things. It's like writing in the diary, and then she's like, "What are you doing?" She says, "I'm not showing you." It's like you share everything. She says, "I don't want to share everything," because she wants to be her own person instead of being told what to do, which I find quite amusing. She's going to go into Jedi order and get told what to do. I don't want to follow rules, okay? And that, but you're going to go into an order that's going to basically, tell you what you're going to do for the rest of your life. So, but we'll see. But yeah, I like the fact that we kind of see them kind of going through this and the conflict between both girls, and it's there is a talk of she uses the thread instead of the force when she's kind of explaining it, and then she does that thing where she's like, you take on one, and there was one of a witch, because they're all female there, aren't they? There were no males whatsoever.
They are. I think they are witches. It's a coven of witches. So it is. I think it's heavily insinuating that they're all female. They're all called witches.
Because I wondered whether is this kind of the start of the Night Sisters. This is maybe where the Night Sisters come from, and that it had that vibes to it, especially when they've all got the ropes on later on and they're kind of chanting around the pit, and it very much kind of gave me them feels from the little bits of the Night Sister episodes I've seen. I know that I really wish I'd watched the 4 bloody episodes this week, and I was going to do an I didn't get around to it because I think the next 4 episodes of Clone Wars that we're going to tackle is very much Night Sisters.
They are, yeah.
So it's one of them things, but that's the vibes that I get. Now, I think from what you've said before, the Night Sisters they're from another planet, and then they came.
Yeah, it's basically from Ahsoka is what, because in Legends the Night Sisters were a much bigger thing, but so they're being quite cagey about it in canon, because in the Clone Wars there's a few more Night Sister episodes we get and things, and there's other content when we finish the Clone Wars that you'll be able to delve into to get a bit more context on certain Night Sister-y stuff. But obviously you played Fallen Order, so Merrin's whole thing is about being a Night Sister and stuff. So basically, so on Dathomir, essentially, there's several covens of witches on Dathomir, but the Night Sisters are the most prominent one. That's only recently been confirmed due to Tales of the Empire, but I won't go into that any further. But there's at least, and I don't know if it's witches, but there's clans of Force users who generally use chanting and rituals and stuff. And on Dathomir, there's at least 2. I think in the canon there might even be 3, because I think one might got another name drop. But there's 2 or 3 on Dathomir, and then it's kind of shown that everyone's got a degree of the Force sensitivity, and there's different ways to tap into it. And I think that Sith magic's quite common. Knights, like dark side magic. I think the magic of the Force is aligned a lot more in the rituals. It's aligned a lot more with the dark side, which is probably why the Jedi are quite against it. But in Ahsoka, when we saw the 3 Night Sisters there, when Morgan Elsbeth travels to Peridia, I think the place is called. That Peridia is apparently where the Night Sister first kind of became Night Sisters, right. And then seemingly they left that galaxy or that universe and joined another galaxy, and that other galaxy is the galaxy we know of with Coruscant and Dathomir and all that stuff. And then they were the first ones to find Dathomir, and they basically kind of, I want to say colonized, but it's not really colonizing; it's just kind of living on there. So yeah, it's kind of in Legends there was way more Force sensitive beings that could do loads of different things with the Force, but in canon they're easing you in. Right. But yeah, these ones, I definitely got the Night Sister vibes. I think these are kind of meant to be part way between almost the Path of the Open Hand, which is the Force cult I mentioned from Phase 2 of the High Republic, and witches like Night Sisters, kind of in between the two. But I think it's trying to show that with the Jedi being in power, they're basically saying it doesn't matter who you are. You're either a Jedi and using the Force with us, or you're probably doing something bad and we don't like it. Yeah,
because at this point there isn't Sith.
Yeah, the Jedi think they're all gone.
Yeah, and that because technically we've only seen one of them so far in one episode.
Yeah, we saw
we briefly saw him. Yeah,
maybe whoever he is. Bad. Yeah, and that's it. Even in canon, to be honest, there's 12 Sith. I think that we've seen, because Darth Bane, although he's a Legends character in arguably the greatest Star Wars books ever, he does appear, or a version of him, shall I say, pops up in the Clone Wars for a scene. So he is officially canon. And then in the book, Shadow of the Sith, which people watching the video can see me pointing to, a book by Adam Christopher, and I interviewed Adam Christopher earlier in the year, so check. It's either earlier this year or late last year. We spoke about that. Fantastic book about Luke and Lando. That references a lot of Sith. That canonizes Revan, because Revan's name gets mentioned by some Sith acolytes and things. So and obviously Darth Vader's a Sith, Palpatine, Dooku. Well, Dooku is, Darth Tyrannus, Palpatine is Darth Sidious, Darth Vader. And then there's a few other that are kind of loosely mentioned. There's Darth Krall is one of them, and there's a few others, but the only ones we've really seen more than 10 to 15 seconds of, we've only seen 4 and Darth Maul. We've only seen 4 in the canon, I think. So there's still anything other than the Jedi in the canon is quite new. But I want to delve into, there's basically, I think the thing that is causing the most amount of ripples online is claiming that this episode has broken the canon And I think it's because I've not delved too far into it because there's so much negativity and it's quite overwhelming at times. I don't want to cloud my kind of unfiltered thoughts when I do these pods. I try not to hear anyone else's opinions.
I think I probably know what people don't like.
Well, there's two elements of it.
Okay.
Now, there's one element of it which is just stupid asshole bigots that hate two women have a kid. And I'm telling you right now, you can all fuck off, okay? Doesn't matter. I've got friends of ours, very, very close friends of ours, same-sex couples with kids, okay? Anyone who's against that, you can fuck off. But aside from the bigots that hate the episode, which they're a vocal minority, and I think the majority of people who don't like this episode and don't like the element of this episode, I'm not saying that they're anti-LGBTQ plus or anything. I think the majority of people are not bigots. But the Immaculate Conception, so there's a few theories. So from what I've seen, and again, I've not looked into this too far, I think a lot of people are basically saying it takes away from Anakin being the Immaculate Conception.
Right.
And also I saw someone basically going, their issue with it was, the Sith for potentially thousands of years have been trying to create life via this way. In Legends, Palpatine and Plagueis try to create life this way and fail, and that's seemingly what causes Anakin to be born. And the kind of thing and then Palpatine has been trying to, after Order 66 sort of time, Palpatine's been trying to clone himself for like 60 years. And then, in The Mandalorian and in other content that we'll eventually delve into, it shows his many efforts, and then they pretty much always get thwarted.
You see that at the end of Last Jedi, is it?
Yeah, there's the start of The Rise of Skywalker, because Snoke is like
Skywalker, because at the end, the bit where Rey kind of has all the different voices coming towards all the different previous masters, and that's you see vats of different. When
Kylo goes to Exegol, you see like goes, I am Snoke, and then you see like a vat of Snokes, and you're like, okay, that's weird. And in the Mandalorian series 2 and 3, I think you see. There's vats of... I think in 2, there's vats of unknown stuff, and then in 3, Gideon's trying to clone himself and stuff. And I think a lot of the people, the issues they have is like, okay, so far in the canon, no one's managed to really clone themselves, a Force user at least, successfully. Palpatine's been trying for ages. The Sith have been trying to use dark side magic and all kinds of stuff to strengthen their numbers for God knows how long. And it takes away from Anakin. Now, I have some opinions and thoughts, quite a few counters to that. When I watched this, I didn't think it to ruin the canon at all. I was like, oh, if Anakin can be born without a dad, surely other people can. But I want to hear your thoughts and what you kind of think about that element, and then I'll chime in if there's anything you haven't mentioned.
The thing is, we have a huge thing of Clone Wars. So cloning is possible in this universe, right? The way I've always seen it, or the way I interpret it is, you can clone that DNA, but as we see with the clone, we keep saying this. One of the best things about the clone troopers is, although they're all the same DNA, they're all so different. They've all got different personalities. So they may start off the same, but they branch out into all these different, you've got Cody and Rex who are very much the leaders, but then you have people like Fives who's a bit loose cannon, they all have built their own personality. Now, that's aside from the DNA, but the way that the Force, I've always understand it, it's a power that's kind of put through them. And that's how I kind of thought that, the Emperor was trying to do things. So the Force thought, we need to balance something out. So here we go. Here's your paracetamol to kind of deal with the headache of the Emperor. and Anakin being the one, again, there's a lot of talks there, Again, the way I kind of see it, Anakin was the one who then gave us Luke and Leia. So he kind of, yes, he spoilers, he went to the dark side. But it's all kind of like it was designed, like that was the path that was meant to be taken. So you can clone people, but maybe they're just not gifted with, the Force. If it is however you want to see, whether it's midichlorians, whether it's a higher power, whatever you want to see this as, it's chosen not to, gun in them clones or you never know. I don't think there is, but there could have been a clone out there that got, at some point got force powers. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I don't think there are, but there might be in Legends. There's a force sensitive droid, which is just nuts.
But there is actually, just as we were just talking before, there is a clone that's got force powers.
Right.
From Force Unleashed. In Force Unleashed 2, you play a clone.
True. Yeah. In Legends, there's a lot more. I mean, in Legends, there's a Dark Empire book, which is quite a controversial book in Legends. And I just want to say, I'm a fan of Legends, okay? But Legends people seem to love to think that there's no issues in Legends, and they're fucking wrong. There's loads. So quite a controversial story is, I think it's Dark Empire, and essentially it's set several years after Return of the Jedi, might even be decades, and basically Palpatine has cloned himself. I wonder where the Rise of Skywalker got that idea. And then Palpatine turns Luke Skywalker to the dark side, and it is decades after, because I think his son or daughter, I think his daughter saves him and brings him back to the light. So again, when people go, oh, they ruined Luke Skywalker, why would he try and kill his nephew and stuff? It's like, well, first, he didn't try and kill his nephew. That was the whole point of his own exile. He didn't kill his nephew. He had a moment of weakness where he thought about it. Second of all, Luke literally went to the dark side in Legends. So the criticisms of that are just ridiculous.
But it depends what people read, depends what people
love to cherry pick. People go, oh, I love Legends. What have you read? Oh, just the top 10 books and none of the shit. And you go, yeah, well, that's why you think Legends is so much better than canon, because there's crap in both and there's gold in both. They're both great, but Legends also has got a 2 to 3 decade head start on canon and didn't have the scrutiny of the internet on it either. But to clarify, I like Legends and canon.
Yeah. So, but going back to this again, as we keep branching off, I didn't mind it. We don't really know the reason behind a plan of wanting. I don't know if she just wanted a child or how, but having the twins, she's obviously gone with Cora and Corel, and they imply that she's used her magic or force, or the thread, to put the babies in there. And that, because at first I didn't realise until she kind of said it. She says, I think she says, you made them, but I carried them. And I thought, oh, right, okay. Because I thought Mother Aniseya?
Aniseya.
Mother Naasa. I thought she was the mother. I thought she carried him at first. But then obviously when they have that conversation, it's like, oh, right, okay. So again, it's a makeup of on both and that. But it's, again, like you've said, people who's got a problem with that, go get a life and that. But I didn't mind it. I mean, I'm sure this isn't the first time it's happened. And that I know the big documentary of, Anakin Skywalker being the chosen one, but, who's to say it hasn't been done before? This is 100 years before. What about 1,000 years? 2,000, 4,000? I'm sure at some point, some Force users thought, do you know what? Maybe we could do this. And maybe it's one of them things of, it's been done before, and it's like, it's severely frowned upon because, that's not the way it should be, but I don't have an issue with it. I don't think it's messed up with canon.
No, I think, anyone who claims anything breaks the canon, I'm just like, even stuff that has retconned things, they're annoying when it happens. There's the Canon comics, a small amount of that gets retconned due to the Bad Batch. There's a few other bits and pieces. And I will say, just remembering, there is a clone who may or may not be force sensitive. But I can't delve into that yet. We'll get there eventually. But the thing is the way I view it. So when Corel and Aniseya are talking about the conception, and she says, you said, I created them, I carried them. Corel says to Aniseya, do you think the Jedi would, basically something like, do you think the Jedi would be so happy if they found out how you did it? Okay. So first of all, it's not a standard thing. You don't just, you don't just get your Immaculate Conception starter kit and everyone can do it. Okay, first of all, you have to be Force sensitive, which again, apart from the Jedi, there's very few Force sensitives in the galaxy, even less so that are overtly Force sensitive to such a degree they can actually use Force powers, because you get people like Maz Kanata, who's like 1,000 years old by the sequels, and she'd be alive right now. As far as I understand, she can't really overtly use the Force, like a Force push or things like that, but she can sense the Force. She maybe could have a Force vision or so. There's characters in the High Republic that are Force sensitive, but not that Force sensitive, and they've got like a power or so they have, but nothing major. Again, linking back to Phase 2, there's a character or two like that. So, first of all, you have to be Force sensitive to be able to do it. Second of all, you have to be willing to do it. Third of all, in Legends, Palpatine and Plagueis, in the Darth Plagueis books, there's a whole bit about them trying to make the ultimate Sith or something. They're playing around with Sith alchemy quite a lot. And the heavy insinuation is that the Force created Anakin to balance them out, as you kind of said. So the Force is all about balance, you know? Luke and Leia, twins. Kylo Ren and Rey, they're Force dyad. Okay, there's two of them. You know, one dark, one light, sort of, for the most part. Two is very common in Star Wars. It's, you know, Master and Apprentice in the Jedi. It's the Sith, the rule of two. Like, there are so many instances where it's two. Two of this, two of that. Twin sons, that's like the most famous thing. The most famous shot in Star Wars, arguably, that's not involving Vader or something, is of Luke Skywalker standing with two sons. Twin sons. Twins everywhere. Twin. Star Wars has got so many things about duality. Anakin Skywalker's whole story is duality. It's the good side being unbalanced and becoming the bad side. And then the equilibrium kind of meets at the end. So my interpretation and what I think has happened, because again, and I want to say to people as well, it's okay if you didn't like this episode that much. It's okay to criticize the Acolyte or any content. Okay, that's fine. I haven't got an issue with criticism. And there's things about this I will criticize. But the fact that someone is basically going, they broke the canon. What, in episode 3 of 8? That's like reading a murder mystery book and getting like a third through it and going, God, this murder mystery is ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. Nothing's making sense. So of course it doesn't make any sense. It's a mystery, you fucking pleb. That's the whole point. The whole point is you don't know. And obviously, the way this whole episode has been structured is very clearly we're going to see it again from the Jedi or May's perspective, probably May's perspective. We're clearly going to see it. We might even go back to it 3 times. It might be the next episode we get a snippet of what May saw, which is why she wants to kill all the Jedi. And then we may get to see it how it actually happened, which would mirror what happened in The Last Jedi. We saw it like one interpretation, then we saw another interpretation, and then we saw the realistic interpretation. So it's probably going to do that.
I mean, even though the Immaculate Conception, they don't actually say that.
No.
So there is a theory that I'm coming up with now. Who's to say there wasn't a Jedi who was already pregnant and she was dying, and they kind of moved the twins from one to the other.
Yeah.
That's a possibility. It could be a case of, I'm dying, my kids are going to die, do something about it. And it's like, well, this isn't practical. This is not what we should do as witches, but okay, we're going to kind of save your girls that way. Again, I mean, I feel that's probably not going to be the way it's kind of come out, but it's a theory.
I think it's on those tracks, to be honest. I think because I think it's going to be some sort of blood ritual or some really, really dark thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if this was all orchestrated by the Sith or by whoever he is or whatever. I wouldn't be surprised, because I think it's insinuated that obviously she's doing really bad stuff and they didn't know about it and it's not natural, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't be surprised if the Sith kind of gently push them towards it. Yeah. Watch them from afar to be like, oh, like, here's a bit of Sith magic. Here's a bit of that. Here's some of my blood. Like, here's some of my Force-sensitive blood. And, here's a bit of this. Try and do these things. And yeah, as you say, they could have got a Jedi and essentially drained the life force of a Jedi and done something else. There's loads of ways, because the thing is, Anakin is Immaculate Conception. No one knows. He just, Shmi Skywalker was just pregnant one day. There's no father. In theory, there's nothing that caused it. It was just, he got born. This is two magical beings who can perform blood rituals and stuff. And we can see in Clone Wars and even in this episode the kind of things the Night Sisters and Coven of Witches are capable of using magic. You know, what they did with Torben, where he kind of breaks back and his eyes go black, which is a really cool effect. There's so many things, and I think that the Sith were manipulating the Coven of Witches to get them to do that as a kind of tester, and then whatever is left over from the events of the Acolyte, maybe Palpatine and Plagueis got like a little bit of it, and then they were playing around with it, and that could kind of answer it. But I want to know more if you've got any further thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is that they're just testing the waters and that. But like you say, this is the third episode. We won't know really. Hopefully, maybe by episode 8, it might explain it all. Maybe next week's, because I must admit, but when this started, I thought we were going to go with the Wookiee, we were going to kind of see that, but then, you know, it's done the flashback. I wonder whether maybe next week, maybe not be a flashback, maybe they'll go back to normal time and then come back and give us May's side, because with the whole thing with May, when she starts the fire and then Osha comes out and she sees all the dead bodies. Something's happened there, and that. So I don't know. I've enjoyed the episode. I think it's one of those. It's left lots of questions, and if anything, I want to see next week's. I'm not one of these that's like, oh no, you know, you've ruined everything. I want to know what's going to go next week, and that. Again, how they both came to be, I don't know, but I'm sure at some point you're going to tell me.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm looking forward to the next episode. I want the plot to keep moving, and I suspect what's going to happen. The next episode will be about Kel Naka and about him and stuff, and then I suspect there'll be the 5th episode. I think will then be May and Osha having some sort of confrontation again, and then May going, "You don't know what they did." And then Osha going, "Yeah, I do." And you go, and she's like, "No, you don't. They did this." And then you see a flashback from her perspective. And then I suspect an episode or 2 later, you'll get like the real version of events. And I feel like I think my prediction from last week was, I think Torben is probably responsible. I suspect there was a bit of a confrontation. They were all like, energy was high. The explosion or whatever happened that caused, or the fire happened that caused everyone to kind of be like, "Oh God, what was that?" And then someone fired off a shot, or Torben thought that someone was lunging towards him or something. He did the first blow. Then the witches probably did some sort of big magic spell that all the Jedi were like, "Oh no." And then maybe tried to like kill them, because it's the mystery of how they all died.
But you see, the mystery of how they all died, you've got 4 Jedi and a Coven of Witches. Now, I know the Jedi are powerful, but I can't see 4 Jedi walking away from that unharmed.
Apart from Torben's eye. That's the only thing. Torben's eye.
Yeah, he's got one. So I don't think it's the Jedi. I think maybe they kick something off, and that maybe something happened with May, and that's what they're not kind of telling, and they see it, and then maybe she just kind of explodes or something like that and kills everybody else. You know, a power is unleashed from her, and that's why they think she died. And that I don't think it is a simple case of the Jedi and the witches fought. And that I think if that is the case, it's a bit crap. Because if anything, then that kind of then puts the witches, and you think, well, the bit where the mother's kind of, she's just the one of the two she's blocking, she seems quite powerful there. So you think that she would be able to go toe to toe with a Jedi if all of a sudden they're all just wiped out just like that, and the Jedi walk away. It's like, I don't buy it. So something else, maybe there's something inside May. No, yeah, inside May that got awoken, and that because she started the ritual, but it got stopped.
So she, I think, because she's got the mark on her head.
She got the mark.
She's air quotes ascended. I think they were just going to do it for Osha.
Was she meant to go into the pit?
I don't know. The ascension.
I thought this. It's now. It's time for you to ascend. Now I didn't know whether that were a case of
going down a pit and then making your way back up.
Yeah,
and that's part of the.
But then,
a good point.
Because it felt like it got broken up. I know it got broken off. So Osha didn't get to kind of do her part. But I don't know. Just it felt as if maybe it's one of these things that they haven't finished off the ritual properly, and there's something a bit loose there.
That's a good point. That would be interesting. Yeah, I think there's a lot of when I watched this episode, because I watched it for the second time today, but I watched it obviously when it aired. And Megan and I watched it and we're like, yeah, that was all right. It wasn't amazing. But I feel like, to me, the issue I've had so far has been these 3 episodes. I feel like it probably could have been done in 2. I think, or they should have all been released at once, because I feel like after the first 2 episodes were a setup and then it's a flashback episode, it's kind of like, or they should have done the first episode, this episode, then the next episode. Do you know what I mean? Because to break it up a bit, because I feel like what happened is, here's all the character introductions, here's a mystery, and then we've solved one of the mysteries, and each time you solve a mystery, like what's happened with May and Osha, they're twins.
A mystery, yeah.
Yeah, and I like that. But I think this show is going to be one of those shows that people like a lot more after they watch it all at once. And I'm starting to feel a bit like that with certain things. I really want to rewatch Kenobi, because I think that if you and I don't want to, because I didn't enjoy it as much, but I feel like if I sat down and watched it in 1 or 2 sittings, I think it would work really well. And I think the reason Mandalorian works so well is because most of the episodes are kind of one-off. Yeah. And I think with like Rebels and Clone Wars, things like that, they're generally either one-offs or in arcs. And so with all these things, the way they're structured is a bit easier to comprehend. But I think with Andor it worked, because you've got the 2-episode start, and then you've got the arcs. And granted, Andor is some of the best written Star Wars in existence. But I think that with Andor, because it's very clear arcs, you can kind of wrap your head around it more, in a sense.
We get that with Clone Wars.
Yes.
We kind of say each time there's normally, after 22 episodes, there's normally like 18, 20 that are really, really good.
Yeah.
And a couple of fillers.
I'd probably say more than that, but yeah.
It's normally in case you get like a 2 or 3 arc and then a filler and that. And the arcs are really good. They're well structured. And then it's a case of, we'll just throw something in there just to kind of fill it out, to kind of a bit of a palate cleanser. I get why they do it, but sometimes it's a case of just keep going with the actual arcs. And that's what works with Andor, because it's like, you've got to do this arc to get to this arc, and they all link together, but they do really well.
Yeah.
Kenobi, I'm sure I've heard someone say that someone took the whole series of Kenobi and turned it into a movie.
They did. They cut a few bits. They cut a little bit out.
Yeah.
Generally, it's essentially the same thing. Because originally, Kenobi was meant to be a movie, and then they changed it into a series, probably because Disney were like, we need people to stay subscribed to Disney Plus. We don't want them buying a subscription for a month, watching all the stuff they want, and then unsubscribing, because that's how people get away with streaming services.
I mean, Kenobi was good, but it seemed very much like, right, we want Kenobi and Vader to face off, right? Check. We want to have Vader looking badass. Check. We want Kenobi to look a bit useless sometimes, then badass again. Check. It felt more like that they had to do certain things and then kind of jam it into a story. And it looks good. It's all right. Not the best.
Yeah, it doesn't add anything to the canon. Yeah. The only thing really adds is that why Leia called her child Ben Solo.
Yeah.
Aside from that, and that was a little thing I was like, it's a bit weird, but I kind of got it. But then when you watch Kenobi, you're like, oh, that makes much more sense. But yeah, I think Kenobi would have been much better with the movie. I think if you'd have basically cut all the Reva stuff, Reva, it is Reva. I think if you cut all that, not because Moses Ingram's a bad actress or anything, I just felt like her storyline was boring. And then right at the end, the switch made no sense of her being like, hey, I'm bad and I'm doing this for ages. Oh, now I'm good again. Oh, actually, no, now I'm going to randomly try and kill a child. And you're like, where is this coming from? No, I know, but like, her turn made her character felt really rushed. But I'm finding that the live action Star Wars series, I wouldn't say they're letdowns necessarily. Well, actually, kind of are. I'm feeling like the animated stuff that I'm watching, they're hitting the stride a bit more. It might be because we're rewatching Clone Wars now, but and we watched Rebels last year, which are two of the best pieces of content out there. But aside from Andor, I wouldn't say aside from Mando Series 1 and 2 that there's been anything that's really blown me away. Ahsoka's pretty good, but it wasn't like must watch. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think maybe with Clone Wars and Rebels, you've got previous to that, so you know how good it is, and that. And again, this. You kind of know.
Where the end journey is.
You know where it's going to go, so it's good to kind of see. This is uncharted territory, so you don't really know where it's going, and that. And maybe that's why people don't like it. It's like, it doesn't make sense. But the thing is, we don't know. This is 100 years set before. Most people really have been watching Star Wars. Most people won't have looked at the High Republic stuff. They won't have played the games. They've just basically consumed certain bits of Star Wars, and it's like, this is not my Star Wars. Well, it is. It's just a different part of it. If you don't like it, that's fine. It's not for everyone, and that but I don't mind it. I'm interested to see where it goes. Not the best episode, but at the same point, I didn't mind the fact that they've kind of gone right. There's been a talk of this big incident. Let's just show you. If they drag this on until episode 5 or 6 before showing us kind of what's happened, I think that's where I might have had a bit more of a struggle, because you always get that, the bad incident that we did, but it's like, well, show us it then. Tell us. Let us then kind of maybe sympathise with you, or maybe even think, yeah, you are at fault for it all. At the moment, I don't think, other than the Jedi coming in and kind of saying, well, we're taking the kids, or, you need to at least let them be tested. They haven't really, the dicks, like Jord, is it Jord from the first 2 episodes?
Yord.
Yord.
Yeah, Yord Tandir, I think his name is.
Yeah, he bit of a dick, but at the same point, he's trying to be the best that he can be, and they are kind of that white knight. That's how he sees himself. The Jedi think they are the white knight. They think that they command respect, and that people should just, because we've said so, this should happen. They haven't given thought about, well, hang on a minute, these children must be one of theirs. We can't just come in and just take them. But they feel like it's their right to do that. So, but that, again, there's that twist there, because like, Osha wants to become a Jedi, and she says to her mum, this is one, and her mum's like, Matt, that's fine. If that's what you want, that's fine. We'll discuss it with the council, but it felt like a mum like, okay, then, if that's really what you want to be, I'm not going to stop you.
Yeah.
And that, because if someone who's done something really, really bad to create these, and if it is for an evil purpose, I don't think she would be doing that. So I think, again, this is why it's like, how did they come about? Where did they come from? And it's another one of them episodes where it's left you with more questions than bloody answers.
I feel the same, but I'm enthralled by it. I'm really interested to see where it goes. I'm of the thing of, if the series ends and there's loads of unanswered questions and plot threads, I will be agitated. That's how I felt a little bit with The Rise of Skywalker. I felt like there were so many new things in there, and I'm like, this is meant to finish up basically a 9-film saga, And it feels like you've added, like, oh, here's a Force dyad. What the hell is that? Don't worry about it. Okay. Palpatine's back. How? We're not going to tell you. Okay. Oh, and also Palpatine is like this ridiculously powerful guy who can shoot lightning in the sky and destroy everything. Right. How did he do that? Oh, he absorbed the life force out of someone. Has that ever been mentioned before in canon? No. Oh, and also the Knights of Ren are back. Where were they? Who cares? They're all dead now. Okay. What's happening? Oh, we're on the planet called Exegol. We've never heard of that before. No, but it looks very cool. You're right. Yeah, but there's literally like millions of acolytes here. Where the fuck did they come from? Don't worry about it. They're all dead now. And you're like, what the hell is going on? Oh, and now we can do light speed skip jumping or whatever it is. What's that? Don't worry about it. It pops up once and we'll never mention it again, and it's never been mentioned before. And you're like, this is meant to be the full stop at the end of an era, and you've added in about 7 or 8 things that have never been mentioned before, and the last like 3 or 4 years of publishing has been trying to write around and explain these things, which a lot of it's done a good job. Shadow of the Sith does it to a degree, explains Rey's parents stuff. That's cool, but they felt a bit on screen for a few seconds and shoehorned in. And then the Ochi Best Student stuff, and they was like, oh yeah, Lando and Luke went on an adventure. What? They spend no time with each other in the original trilogy. Yeah, they do. Okay. You're going to talk about that not more? No, but what we are going to do is bring Lando in, and then completely waste him, and then also have him say, I don't fly anymore, and then literally in like 10 minutes, without any comment, he's suddenly in the Falcon, and they never mention it again. And you're like, that's how I felt with Rise of Skywalker.
Checklists. It's checklists.
Well, yeah, but that's how I felt with Rise of Skywalker, which is why I think it's one of the worst, if not the worst Star Wars film, because it's just, there's way too much stuff that just doesn't get explained in it. The prequels are flawed, but most of the prequels kind of explain themselves, bar the mention of the Rule of Two. And then Mace Windu randomly says once to Yoda in Phantom Menace, or Attack of the Clones, I think it is, oh, we're losing our ability to connect with the Force. And then it's never mentioned ever again. Like, aside from, there's the odd moment in the prequels which is said and they're not spoken about, but in the Rise of Skywalker there's loads, and I feel like in this they're intentionally making you ask questions so that you'll watch the remaining episodes. Do you know what I mean?
I think as well, you think when you wasn't born, but when Star Wars came out, it was right, okay, I'm going to throw you in. He's basically, Lucas threw you into a battle, and that didn't explain anything. This is happening. All of a sudden, there's a big black,
evil guy,
and that what's here, Dave's famous name for him. But it just threw you in there. It didn't do a big setup. It didn't try to explain it all. The movie did all right. He then did the sequels. Sometimes I think they're trying to be too clever, and they're trying to think, right, okay, then if we do this, we're going to have to think in 3 seasons' time, it's going to tie in with this, and this film has to tie, and that. So sometimes they're overthinking things, which then stunts them being able to do some of the cool stuff that for all his flaws, Lucas did have a good idea.
Yeah.
And that, I know his wife, she was a big...
Heavily edited the script and stuff.
Yeah. And that, but he did have a good idea behind that.
Same as the prequels. The prequels are chock full of great ideas. It's just the dialogue lets it down.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Again, with the prequels, he kind of threw you into it. He didn't start trying to explain too much, whereas I think Star Wars now is trying to be too clever. It's trying to say, oh, yeah, well, this person said this, so that, 1,000 years before, stop trying to tie it all together. I know, I get the reason why they're doing it, because like with Disney, with the Marvel universe, everything had to tie in, and they did a really good job going up to Endgame. Everything tied in so well. After Endgame, it's not been as good. It's been a bit of a mess. And again, I think they're trying to overthink too much and trying to jam too many stories together. If you do a story and it doesn't fit with anything else, you say, oh, that's fine. It just happened in a different part of the galaxy. It's big enough. Stop overthinking it.
Yeah, I agree. I think, because that's one thing that Ben and I of Star Wars Timeline have discussed. And the thing is, one of the reasons that we think Legends worked in certain respects quite well, but also one of the reasons Legends didn't work in certain respects is because Lucas didn't really get involved in Legends much at all. There was the odd thing where someone would ask him a question about stuff, or he would lose. I think he had like veto power
He'd
almost.
make you up on in the moment, wouldn't he?
Yeah, just be like, this thing. But like in Legends, generally people kind of left to do their own stuff. It was loosely, don't really contradict stuff. But aside from that, there wasn't a whole team of people trying to make sure everything connected together. And I agree with you. I think the problem is Disney are trying to make money on the streaming service, so they want people to keep going back and stuff. But I feel like there is certain canon content, especially some of the comics and books, and you read it and you finish it and you go, there's no point of this apart from just filling in a plot hole or a gap. And like Rogue One is just to fill in a plot hole, but it's one of the best Star Wars films. It's well made. It's got a lot of weight to it. It's very mature. There's new characters. It's cool. But I think that with a lot of the content, I agree with you, and I love interconnected stuff. But there are times I read it and I'm like, there's no reason for this to connect to anything else. Again, why I love the High Republic books and stuff, because it doesn't forcibly connect to other things. But I want to mention, so in this, there's a couple of we've loosely talked about some of our issues with Star Wars, but I want to do a balanced perspective, especially because this is such a negative episode. On IMDb at the moment, I know review bombing exists, but on IMDb, it's got 3.8, which is just insanely low. I'd probably give it like a 6 or something. But I want to ask, are there any things about this episode in particular that you weren't as much of a fan of? So for me, I'd say with the stuff at the start with the twins under the tree, I found that quite boring. I didn't really connect with the twins when they were young that much. I found that when they were fighting a lot, I found that felt a bit forced. No pun intended. But it felt like when they were squabbling, it went from 0 to 100 immediately, and suddenly they were like hitting each other. And I was like, I'm not saying kids don't do that, but it felt it also was a bit weird because they're meant to be like 8, and I was like, they feel a bit older. But I thought the kids were a bit meh, but that was kind of a bit that I found a bit dull. And then one other bit I noticed was, especially on this watch, at the Ascension ceremony, there seems to be around 30 to 50 witches. So there's quite a lot. But when they're all dead, there's 20, maybe 30 at a push. But there's about 20-something dead in one room. And then the room where Mother Aniseya is dead, there only was like 2 or 3 corpses. Now, I'm going to clarify. I've defended Star Wars for doing worse than that. Okay, I'm not. But it's one of those things. It was just a little bit. I was like, look at all those witches at the Ascension. And then they're all dead. And you're like, that doesn't look like all of them. So that was there were 2 little bugbears of mine, which was the witch amount, and also I thought that the twins as kids, I thought they were a little bit boring. But conversely, costume design's amazing, and Jodie Turner-Smith as Mother Naasa, for me, stole the show. I thought every time she was on screen, her gravitas, her whole energy really grabbed me. I loved that character. But what about yourself? Were there any things about this episode in particular that you weren't as much of a fan of, or that you were, to counter me?
One of the things I did like, just to counter you, the bit when Mother said she turned and she did the force push against them, and May stood forward to protect her sister and also kind of hid behind. I thought that's quite an interesting one. That again, you kind of seen the one who's kind of got the fire in her, and the one who's a little bit more reserved. But yeah, it felt a little bit claustrophobic sometimes, especially with the whole Ascension bit where it kind of felt like, I know there was outside, but at the same point it felt like he was narrowed in a room, like they were all kind of bunched up together.
Like on a set, it felt a bit like. Because Dave, I think, made that connection as well in the prior episode.
Which, yeah, I mean, because again, when the 4 Jedi come in again, it feels a little bit, it kind of takes you out of it. Considering it were meant to be in front of this like well kind of and a cliff face or something like that. I don't know. It didn't feel. Maybe that's where the budget kind of dropped off there, and that it kind of took me out a little bit. But yeah, it's same as like you see a lot of dead bodies, but I have this issue with Star Wars all the time. It's a giant planet, but we've only got like one little city. Okay, where's the rest of the people? Well, no, they all live in this little city on this giant planet. It's a giant coven of witches, but we're only going to see a few. Surely, unless the CGI'd some of the witches there, surely you had them all there to kind of blame out. But
That's what I thought.
But unless it's just not shown the rest, the thing is, if there is another flashback to show from the other side, maybe the trail of bodies go further than what we've seen.
Yeah, because the mother's in a different room to the rest of them.
Because she had to climb through like the vent to kind of get out, so she didn't go the normal way out. So as May went out, she may have encountered people as she would, but again, I feel that May must have attacked just because she was walking with a candle, and burning the book. I don't think they would have just all piled on her. They would have been like, come on, calm down, kind of, So something's obviously, I've written down, we've seen this, but this isn't the true story of what's gone on. We are still just as much in the dark now, knowing what's happened and that. But yeah, I think maybe it is like the budget there that's kind of letting it down a bit, because it's taking you out of it. And that there's little things that you notice that are like, oh, that's a set. You don't buy into it quite as much as maybe as well. When you watch on the big screen, the films, you kind of you're enthralled and you're pulled into this. Whereas this, again, it felt a bit stop-start at times. We had them in the woods with Sol kind of watching them from a distance, and then it kind of jumped somewhere else, and then jumped to someone else, and then it jumped to the Ascension. So yeah, not the best episode, but it's not a 3. I think I would put it in that 6 range. It's a mid-range. It's kind of, it may be like you said, once the series finished and you go back and rewatch it, you'll watch it and you'll think, I get what they were trying to say there. But at the moment, like you said, there's more questions now than answers. We're more kind of confused now what's gone on than what we was before.
Yeah, and I stand by, like, there are episodes of Clone Wars that are worse than this, by far. Mm-hmm. Like, overtly, and not just the ones with Jar Jar. There's a few that we watched, especially in those early series, when you're just like, what is happening? Like, this is just boring dross. And I can say, Resistance as well, almost every episode of Resistance is substantially worse than this. And, the Clone Wars movie, not as bad on the rewatch, but I depending on what the next episode's like, I'd probably think if the next episode is as good as probably the premiere, and I think the premiere wasn't amazing, I think it was probably 7 out of 10, guess. It was like good, but not amazing. I think if it's good again, I would say the first 4 episodes of Acolyte are better than the Clone Wars movie. Because the Clone Wars movie is actually quite weak. Aside from, there's less stuff about Stinky, aka Rot of the Hutt, and there's a couple of cool lightsaber battles, but really, it just kind of plods along and takes forever to do anything and keeps feeling like it's going to finish and it doesn't. Whereas I think with the Acolyte, I do wonder if this was released in a different time. If Disney bought Star Wars like just after Revenge of the Sith, like not 10 years after, like just after, they let George do Clone Wars as he did anyway, and then they started developing the sequels and that kind of stuff in the meantime. I don't know. Or even if like George did the prequels 5 years earlier and everything somehow was identical, he did everything. Obviously, it wouldn't be because of CGI and age of actors, blah. But say he did it 5 years earlier, and everything in Star Wars was 5 years earlier, and then Disney acquisition was, maybe 10 years earlier. I do wonder, because it just feels like it's so many people actually have careers now hating on Star Wars online. And there's people that I interact with who are positive Star Wars YouTubers and podcasters. I'd say I'm generally a positive one, but I'll be openly criticizing stuff when I don't like it, like I did with Ahsoka and Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan. But there's someone, I think Star Wars on High, and they posted 2 near identical videos at the same sort of time, but one of them was just a normal, so something was like a review of whatever, and the other one was testing, and it was more of a clickbaity kind of title with more of a clickbaity kind of image, and it got like 100 times more things and watches, and he was like, it's really irritating because I just want to release normal Star Wars content, but when I release clickbaity stuff, or even not even clickbait, but like making it sound like you're going to slate Star Wars when you're not, that kind of thing.
But people are ready to kind of tear it down straight away. That's the thing.
They want to hate it. That's the problem.
And it's like, it's not my Star Wars, but I'm 46 this year, and that I have kind of grown up. I've grown up through all the stages of Star Wars. I did miss the animation, which I'm making up for now. I can enjoy it all for its own piece, and that, and if there's anything there that you could go back and say, well, this isn't the original trilogy. That's still there. If that's what you like, go back and watch that. This isn't for you, fair enough. Maybe one of the other series is, and that. But if you don't like it, that's fine. It's not a problem. You can say you don't like it, but you don't have to down it, because there are people out there who do enjoy it, who do like it, and that. Let them enjoy it, and that. If it's not for you, fine, don't watch next week. Bet you will, though. I bet you'll be sat there Wednesday night or Wednesday, whatever time during the day, watching it, just so then you can go and then kind of slate it and that. Yeah. Which, that's fine. You're just giving Disney viewing figures, and you're also paying for Disney, so they don't really care because you pay for it.
Well, that's the thing.
Hopefully.
I think. Well, the thing is with what's happening with Star Wars, it bothers me, and it seems to. There's other shows that have it a little bit. Marvel has it a little bit, but it's mainly Star Wars. Is that people have fun hating it, and it's so weird because when I watch something I don't like, the main thing I'm annoyed about is I've just wasted my time. Now, even if I watch a film that's crap, I'm okay with it, because even as long as it's not ridiculously long, the only film I like overtly regret watching is a Martin Scorsese film called Silence. It's 3 hours long. It's atrocious. It's got Adam Driver and Andrew Garfield in, and I was like, it's really cool. The trailer looked good. I love lots of Scorsese's work. And then you watch and you're like, this is just one of the worst things I've ever seen. It's just boring and takes forever, and it's just awful. But that's probably one of the only films I regret, because no one's seen it, so I can't even slate it with other people, and it took forever. But you watch a rubbish film, and it's fun to talk about. VHS Strikes Back, they watch a lot of that. But so I get watching a film that may be bad and stuff, but investing in a series, especially one that you have to watch consistently for weeks. When Megan and I watch a film, or when Megan and I watch a show, or if we watch like the first film in like a franchise or something and we don't like it, we just don't watch the rest. This is the thing that I find I really struggle with, because I love Star Wars. I don't love all Star Wars. I enjoy all Star Wars at different levels. Some I only just really enjoy as entertainment. Others I bloody love. But like, I enjoy Star Wars as a whole. I enjoy consuming Star Wars content. But there's certain stuff which I don't enjoy, and I just don't watch it. I just don't bother. Why? It's so weird to me. And some people spend hours online. They watch this stuff they hate, and then they spend hours online telling people how rubbish it is. And I'm like, when I watch stuff I don't like, I very rarely even mention it. Unless I watch a film that is like utterly atrocious, I'll very rarely post about it online, very rarely do reviews on it or anything, because I'm like, I don't want to waste any more energy on something that I don't like that's only spreading negativity. What if some people listen to like music and they hate it and they keep listening to it and constantly talk about online about it?
Stop listening to it.
Yeah, but there's so much. It's for entertainment. That's the thing. This whole show is literally, you're meant to watch it to be taken into a universe that's mystical, a fantasy, sci-fi universe, and it's meant to entertain you. If it's not entertaining you, why are you watching it? But there are people who watch it who are friends of ours and things who genuinely like Star Wars and do enjoy Star Wars, and they're finding that more Star Wars more recently isn't lining up with what they like as much, which is completely fine. I'm not saying you can't criticize The Acolyte. I'm not saying you can't criticize Star Wars. I'm just saying, if you have basically consistently not liked any Star Wars content for the last 4 or 5 years, why don't you just phone it in? Why bother? Marvel, I like Marvel. I literally haven't even watched Echo. I haven't watched What If. I liked What If Series 1. I like the Netflix series that sort of inspired Echo. I like Hawkeye, which is kind of like a soft prequel to it. But I just have I just want a little break from Marvel. And even then I'm like, I'm not going to watch it for a while. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Don't know. I'll see what people say. And that's something I've invested a lot of time in.
That's the thing. for them people out there who don't like it, don't watch any more of it. Wait until it's all come out, then have a look, see reviews, see what people think, then maybe watch it. Maybe it's like two films that I think both me and you probably disagree about. The Crow, you're not a fan of it. It's probably one of my favorite films I've ever watched. It came out at a time which was just probably right for me, and that they recently just re-released it with The Crow film coming up again in I think in August or October or something, the remake, and that I love that, and whatever you wanted to say, you would not change my mind. However, I am Jack's Season Lovers. I hate Forrest Gump. I think the best part of Forrest Gump was when the credits appeared at the end, because I just, it's not a film for me. And that now I know you really like that one. And that
the way you feel about The Crow is pretty much the way I feel about Forrest Gump.
And that's the thing. But it's just different times of our lives when we sat down and watched it. It just resonated something with us, and that. But your opinion isn't wrong, and my opinion isn't wrong. That's mine. That's yours. You're entitled to it, and that. I don't have to come here and kind of start slagging it off and carrying on at you and telling you how wrong you are. I can just accept the fact that we have different thoughts on this, and that's fine. Star Wars, there is going to be always something in here that people aren't going to like. And that's fine. You don't have to like everything. But you don't have to tell everybody else that you're wrong and it's shit and it's ruining everything and it's messed up the canon and this is the end of Star Wars, because it's not. They'll keep making it. It's still making money. They'll keep on doing this and that. If maybe they released it at Acolyte and no one watched it, maybe they would go, I think we got it wrong here. But people are still watching it. Just unfortunately, the vocal people, it's normally, the bad reviews because they're the loudest ones.
Yeah, and the way that social media is set up with all the algorithms, generally, the way to keep someone on social media, be it X or Facebook, and this is, I think, there's a documentary about it, and I can't remember what it's called, but it basically explains like how all the algorithms are all set up because they're set up for engagement. And the main way people engage on social media for long periods of time to keep you on the app, to keep you watching ads, to keep making the app money is when you get into arguments with people online. It's just, I've been guilty of it. Everyone is, If you post something that you really like and I comment going, I think it's cool too, that's the end of that interaction. Yeah. But if I post something going, you suck, it's awful, you're an idiot for liking that, and you go back going, what? No, I'm not. Here's the reasons why I think it's really good. And I come back and we spend an hour arguing on there. In between our replies, we're going to be on the site, we're going to be looking at other posts, we're going to be... So the thing is that it's just whether or not it's intentional or not, I think it's more probably... It was not necessarily intentional, but when they started noticing it was happening, they're like, let's just ignore that. Let's pretend we don't know about those issues. I think that it's just one of those things that, unfortunately, on social media and other stuff, all the engagement cycles into feedback loops. And I see people online arguing, and I'm like, when I see someone online slating Acolyte saying how it's ruined Star Wars, I don't engage with them. I don't retweet it or repost it and then quote it and then say, yeah, this is the reason why people are stupid. Or like, when people slate the sequels, I don't go in the things that are arguing with them, telling them that the sequels are amazing. And when people say the sequels, The Rise of Skywalker is their favorite film, I don't go in there and tell them they're an idiot because of all the reasons I mentioned earlier. I don't know why people feel the need to try and force. The only thing I can think of, because it might be because I've not met anyone personally who acts like this, so maybe I've got a wrong view on them. But I just feel these people are so deeply unhappy, and so there's nothing that's like satiating them. There's like, for me, if you said like, oh, do you want to argue with someone online for 2 hours online? You're like, oh, do you know how many other things I've got to do that are better? I can think of 50,000 things I would rather do than argue with someone on X about Star Wars. What a waste of time. And this is, unfortunately, I understand that a lot of people who love the sequels and the supporters of the Disney Star Wars, which I generally am, a lot of these people, they're like, yeah, we can't just let these negative people go on the internet and just spout loads of racist, stupid stuff. And I'm like, well, you kind of can, because if we just left them to it, they would all go in their weird little bubbles on the other side of the internet, and we would never hear from them again. But unfortunately, it's people that I respect their content who engage with these people who it doesn't matter. You are, the problem is as well with art is, as you've very aptly put in a much shorter, more concise way of me waffling, is that no one can convince me out of enjoying the Star Wars films. Now, I can have conversations with people and they can reframe certain things, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worst. Indiana Jones, unfortunately, Raiders of the Lost Ark, knowing that Indy has no impact on the plot, unfortunately takes a little bit away from it. Not a huge amount, it's still a fun movie, but it does take away from it a little bit. And conversely, there's other films I've watched and I'm like Zodiac, a David Fincher film that I hated. I hate that film. But speaking to like Jack and some other people who really like it, and I explain the reasons I hate it, and they go, that's the point. The way you're feeling, the way you feel unsatisfied, the way you're frustrated about it all is the point, because all the characters in the film feel that way, and it's based on real life where they never caught the killer, even though they're adamant they knew who it was. And I was like, I respect the film more. I haven't rewatched it since, but it's reframed a little bit how I perceive the film. And for most things, you can tweak little things by certain conversations. But at the end of the day, no one is going to talk me out of the serotonin hit I get when I watch Revenge of the Sith. It's not the same with you with the Crow.
On Clone Wars and that, and normally we'll have an episode in that part of the season that we've really enjoyed, and that lately it just seems to be all of them. But sometimes I've listened to Dave and I've thought, I don't like that one, and then he's taught me around and I thought, okay, I can appreciate it. I can change my view a bit. It's still not my favourite, or vice versa. It's still my favourite, and he's wrong. But you can appreciate someone else's opinion and that, but you still have your own, and you can still believe your own. Now, again, like you said there with the Zodiac, I remember the film. It's a good film, and it does leave you that kind of, but what? What happened?
And I didn't know about the Zodiac Killer when I watched it. Right. So I had no idea. So I thought, this will give me all I need to know about the Zodiac Killer. Then it finished, and I was like, what? And I looked it up and I was like, they never caught the killer. And I was like, I wish I knew that before watching it.
I should have done. Maybe going into it and knowing the fact that they never actually caught him. And it was highly speculated who it was, but unfortunately, nothing stuck. But going back and knowing that now, you can think, right, I can see it in a different view now. I can see where they're coming from and why they're trying to tell us this story, and the story is completely different then. So you can then appreciate it. Star Wars the same. I won't be surprised once these episodes are all aired and I go back and watch them all again. I will appreciate. I may still kind of think, actually, no, they're really cocked up there. But more than that, you're going to appreciate what they did in the previous episodes by knowing where their story's gone.
Yeah.
Again, Andor, we know where the story leads to, and that. So maybe kind of seeing how it got there in a way, which sometimes is a negative thing, because we say this with Star Wars with Anakin. If you've got a scene with Anakin, Ahsoka, and let's say a red shirt guy, and you think, wow, looks like one of these ain't gonna live. Who's it gonna be? Ooh, red shirt guy. But sometimes knowing where it ends up to, but not knowing how they've got there, can be a lot of fun. You can really enjoy this. This is all new territory and that. But I'm sure once we get to the end of it, we'll be able to go back and think, actually, I see what they were doing. And if this is one of them episodes where there's going to be a flipped version where you see the other side, you're going to go, that makes a lot more sense now.
I agree. Yeah, I think this will, and I've seen people online talking about like Book of Boba Fett. A lot of people never bothered with it, or they tried it and they couldn't get on with it, and then they've gone back and rewatched it, and a lot of people gone, you know what, this isn't as bad as I remember. I found that with the Clone Wars movie. I remember that being shockingly bad. And then I watched it, I was like, you know what? It's not amazing, but it's not like overtly terrible. There's films I've watched that are much, much worse. Much worse. And so it is an interesting one. And being in the midst of it, and obviously why I'm quite heavily in the Star Wars space on social media and stuff, because I interact with, I follow a lot of the authors, a couple of them follow me, I have conversations on social media about Star Wars, but normally it's like a message or two back, not like a 2-hour Twitter argument. But again, it's also time because, it's a lot of how you process art is where you are in your life. As you've said with The Crow, and with Forrest Gump and stuff, there's things, as music, music's a big one for it. Most people's favourite artists and favourite albums normally were their favourite albums when they were a teenager or in their early 20s, and you can't shake it. Mine is Slipknot's first album. It's not the best album in existence, but for me it is, because it completely changed how I perceive music. And nothing can ever do that, because my mind's already been changed. I already like lots of death metal and classical music and rap and all kinds of stuff. But Slipknot was the main thing that, because it was a mesh of so many genres, it was unlike anything I've ever heard, it changed something in me. It changed how I perceive music, and I can't unchange that. There's no other, Pandora's box opening moment I can get with music, because that was the one moment. So nothing's ever going to beat that.
But that's like growing up, whenever I hear Queen or Cat Stevens, I think of my dad.
I think of Cat Stevens. Yeah, my dad. I think of Cat Stevens. My dad used to sing it quite a lot.
Yeah, and the certain things that I hear, and it just takes you back there. It associates. You think, there's my dad. That is, and but that's kind of what it's there. Certain things will kind of trigger certain emotions, and being in a certain time, you will kind of gravitate towards a film or some music or a TV program or something like that. And other people are going to know you're wrong, but you're not, because it's maybe the film or whatever, or the music, whatever, it's maybe not brilliant, but the emotion that it pulls up is what kind of sells it to you. And that, and again, it's a form of entertaining. It's obviously done something, and it's triggered something in me, and that's why I like it.
Yeah, and I think Star Wars' biggest problem is the baggage with it. Because you've got people, the fans are the problem. Yeah, fans in air quotes, but it's the problem because original trilogy. I think the original trilogy films are objectively better made films than the other trilogies. There's just less faults to them, but I think that the dialogue in the sequel trilogy, for the most part, is probably the best. But also, and the special effects are probably the best. But also, I think the overall story of the prequels is the best overall. So they've all got their merits. But the thing is that depending on what the thing is, of Star Wars, unlike anything else, is each trilogy of Star Wars is very different. And then also in amidst that, you've got the books from Legends and Canon and this, that, and the other. And you've got, before the prequels, Legends books like Heir to the Empire and the Rogue Squadron novels. And then you've got post-prequels Legends books, which is a lot more about the Sith and the Jedi and a lot more about the history. And the thing is depending on what you value about Star Wars will depend on what you prefer. And also when you got into Star Wars, generationally, not always, but there's a far higher percentage of millennials that like the prequels than, say, boomers. Just because a lot of people who are boomers or older were around and a being when the original trilogy came out. Then when the prequels came out, they were like, this is weird, this is different, this isn't what I wanted, this isn't my Star Wars, who's Jar Jar Binks? But when I grew up with the prequels. So Star Wars has always had Jar Jar Binks in it for me. Always. And that's the thing.
Yeah. The thing is, I think if someone said which would you prefer to watch, which three, I would go with the originals.
Yeah.
However, kind of going back and watching, though we haven't done Revenge of the Sith yet, I would say the prequels have several moments in there stick with me and make me think of Duel of the Fates.
Yes.
And, the final part of, even the giant fighting on Attack of the Clones, well, the clones and the Jedi are all fighting. And that there's certain things that kind of stick with you more and think, actually, that was really good, that one. The final bit in Revenge of the Sith, you're right, brother Anakin. It still tinkles you. And that. And then you go for the sequels, I struggle to really remember much about it, to be fair. and
Yeah,
that. Now, I know at some point we will rewatch them and that, but I think probably they're the least favourite. They probably look the best because modern technology has moved on so much that
100%.
they can make things look a lot better. But I don't think they didn't hit us. I've only watched them once, whereas the others, and that I've watched a couple of times now, well, the originals I've watched every Christmas.
Yeah, of course.
Growing up, that's what we watched. It's Christmas time, Star Wars is on, and that. But yeah, it's one of those things. It depends where you are, but certain things do just hit you and just make you remember certain things.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I think Star Wars especially benefits a lot of the time from the rewatch. I normally say for a lot of things, especially when it's lore heavy or it's a sequel of something, I often find you watch it once for the experience, for the plot, for the shock of it, but then you watch it a second time to really get into the details. And I think with the sequels, every time I watch the sequels, they do get better, I'd say. Rise of Skywalker, first half of that film, is genuinely really good. The first half, the light speed skipping bit, I moaned about it earlier. It's cool looking. It doesn't make any sense, and it's never mentioned before or since, but it's cool. You can kind of look past it. The first half of that film is really good. It's just the second half is just a mess, and it just is inconsequential, and that's my problem with it. And it just ruins a lot of other. Well, I hate using the word ruin because nothing ruins other stuff. You can just.
It's still there.
Ruined my childhood. Yeah, nothing ruined your fucking childhood. Shut up. Like, it's not. Nothing ruined your childhood. Well, if there's something in your life may have ruined your childhood. A film reboot can't ruin your childhood because you know what you do? You don't watch the reboot. You watch the original. It's not.
It's like Michael Bay with Transformers. Now, Michael Bay has done some really good films, but with Transformers, I think he got it wrong.
Yeah,
but he didn't ruin my childhood because I can still think back and playing with Transformers and watching Transformers, and the original cartoon movie and things like that. I can still go back and do that, and that I've got kids. I can still get away with playing with toys, as well. It's always there. You can always go back and do it. It's crap to turn around and just say, "Oh, well, you've done this, so you've ruined everything." But just if you don't like it, don't watch it. Move past it.
I agree completely. We'll start to wrap up on this, but I will say there's one little thing I teased at the start about an ancient Sith species. So this is just a theory of mine. I seem to be the only person I've checked online. I'm the only person who has this theory, I think. So probably wrong. But there's a character called, I think, Mother Naasa, her name is. She's the really, really old woman who speaks when they go,
yes.
"What are we going to do?" And she goes, "Well, if they fail the test, the Jedi won't take them." And then they kind of... So she's a different species to anyone else. And I looked on Wikipedia, I've looked online at a few things. It doesn't confirm her species. She's just an alien. Now, two things here. First of all, and not many people, even the haters, I've not seen many people point out this online, and I'm surprised. On the first watch, I saw this, and I don't normally catch this, and this is going to give fuel to these haters. When you see the mother, old lady, sat down, you can see where the glove of her alien skin stops and where the human skin starts. You can see it on one of her arms, and that really annoys me because that makes it feel like it was rushed. It makes me think of Game of Thrones series 7 or 8 or whatever it was with the coffee cup. So I saw that and I was like, come on. I saw that first time. That wasn't the second watch. The first time I saw it, I was like, oh, just when she lifts her arm, you see down her sleeve and you can see it, unfortunately. It happens, I think there's one MCU movie, I think, it might be MCU, it might also be Star Wars, where there's a character who's like all blue and there's like a rip somewhere and the skin underneath isn't the same colour. It's something like that. But that was one little thing. But the main thing I said about is the Sith species. Now, anyone who doesn't consume Legends and like quite deep into Legends is in the really, really old days. Well, it's not that deep because it's Knights of the Old Republic games. Essentially, there was a species of beings called the Sith. And they basically used the dark side and stuff. And what kind of happened in very layman's terms, because I only half know it and I'm trying to be quick, is Jedi split from the Jedi Order. And they went off into the galaxy being nomads, and then they found their way to some Sith, and then the Sith taught them the dark side, and then those Jedi kind of renamed themselves as the Sith in a sense. And I think the Sith could mate with humans as well and stuff like that. But she looks quite a lot in at least from my perception, as a Sith species. So if she was, if she is the species of the Sith, which is essentially extinct by now, it would lend it more to understanding the dark side stuff, maybe how the creation of the twins were made, blah, 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 something like that. I will say that I've tried looking at a lot of comparisons. She could also just be an old Sullustan, which is, I don't think it is, but it could be Nine Nunb, who's in Return of the Jedi, who Megan hates. She calls him the guy with the wet mouth. He flies with Lando in the Millennium Falcon when they're on the Death Star, and he's like, that thing, and he's got a really wet mouth, and he's like a monkey with weird open layer skin. Could be that. Someone else said it looks like it could be really old Klatooinian, which is like a dog-face person thing that's in Mandalorian and other stuff. It could just be a random alien that they haven't named yet. But that was a little theory of mine.
The Jedi originally came from the Jedi.
From this book here, actually, which I had in the background for a reason. So there's a Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void, which is a really cool book. I really enjoy it. See in the cover that's a character with a sword, because it was before lightsabers were a thing. And it also coincides with the Dawn of the Jedi comics. There's 16 of them. There's Comic Zero, which is like an encyclopedia, and then issues 1 to, the 3 mini-series of it. They're quite cool, but that's like really old school stuff. That's like, I think that's as early as Legends go, really. As like early as, I think it's the earliest Legends go. But yeah, the Jedi Order were kind of like space police in this small system around Tython. Tython's where Luke and Mando and Grogu were. Well, no, Grogu, when he sits on the Seeing Stone and he calls Luke Skywalker in Mando Series 2, that planet is Tython. It's like one of the original Jedi homeworlds. There's Tython, Ahch-To, which is where Luke hides out in Last Jedi, and then there's a couple of others. So the Jedi Order, and then the Sith, and they basically eventually formed the orders of the Jedi and the Sith. But I want to ask, as we'll wrap up, because we've been chatting for over an hour and a half, is there anything else, because we spoke quite a bit about the episode, and then we went on loads of tangents, which I love. I always love tangents, and I love chatting with you, Maff. Is there anything else you wanted to mention in this before we wrap up?
I don't know. So we've kind of skipped over most of the notes.
We have. I would say one bit I noticed, which was there was the explosion under the Coven when Osha sees May, and it seemed to not really do anything, because she's like, May, and it's like Osha, and then the explosion happens literally next to her, and then she's just in the same place, and then walks up the stairs more. And I was like, what? What was the point of that? What was the point of that big explosion when it seemingly didn't actually do anything?
Yeah, it seems like the bit when they're on the bridge, and that, and again, you don't see you see it kind of go, but you don't see it actually fall, do you? And then Soul just suddenly appears from nowhere and drops over Osha, and that. Again, it's that thing where they've left you kind of, what's actually happened, and that. But that's why I think it'll be interesting if they do another flashback, but they show May's side. I don't know if they will show too much of it, and that they may just show a little snippet. They won't do another episode like this, I don't think.
No, I hope not. I don't want another one.
Yeah, just maybe a little 10-minute. Just kind of, this is kind of from what her side happened. Maybe from once they leave the room, when she left the room, when she locked her in there. Yeah. And kind of this is what happened, and that. But again, the red-bladed guy that we saw, maybe he was always there. Maybe he's the one who's taken May, and that maybe he led her through, and maybe he was the one that the witches all fought and got decimated. I don't know. We're speculating now. Hopefully, whatever comes next, and that people will get back on board, enjoy it. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait till Wednesday. And that, give me more Star Wars.
Well, especially as you say, there's all new characters. Anything can happen. That's the fun of it. The only thing that can't really happen is the Jedi overtly discover the Sith. The only way that can happen is if all the Jedi discover it die. That's aside from that.
Yeah, the thing is, they could, two Jedi's that are left now could end up going, hang on a minute, this is the Sith. The big, hopefully they don't do the typical James Bond, I'm going to tell you my plot kind of thing, but they could discover them, they could find it and just all get killed off. And that, because, no one's really safe in this because we don't know anyone. So, to be fair, it's like you said at the start of, with Carrie Moss, the first episode, the first few, 10 minutes, she gets killed. And you're like, what? Now, we've seen that, Drew Barrymore did it in Scream. There was such a massive thing of pushing Drew Barrymore so bad, and then killed her off in the first 10 minutes. And then we're like, what's going on? Obviously, she's been in the flashbacks. I'm sure there's going to be another flashback where she's in there. And, they wouldn't have her in there just for a couple of little scenes, but it kind of gets you thinking, I don't know what's going to happen. You've just killed a major character off, or a major actor off, and that anyone's fair game. Again, one of the good things about Game of Thrones is no one was safe. Until you got near the end, and then you kind of thought, well, Jon Snow's going to be all right. But
we're same with Andor though, because apart from Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, and Cassian Andor,
but you see, Mon Mothma and Bail Organa, Andor's a bit different, but they're there, but they're not ever in real danger.
Yeah, there's a side story going on with them, kind of political intrigue.
You can use them and kind of tell a story, but not put them in danger. Andor's a little bit different than that because, you've got to follow him. But is it Lucas Ray, is it?
Oh, Luthen Rail, sorry.
Luthen Rail, sorry.
Yeah.
And that, he's brilliant. I really love him in it.
Yeah.
And you just don't know where it's going to go. And that's one of the good things. At some point, he may get killed off. He may not do. Who knows? And that, there's always that thing of, well, they can't be there because it's like Ahsoka can't be in, something. What happens with Ahsoka anyway. But I don't. But some people must be explaining why Ahsoka wasn't in, Star Wars further down the line. And that, something must have happened. So, but that's because we didn't get Ahsoka's story until many years later. So, they can kind of play around with things. I trust them. I mean, Filoni, he's still kind of watching over things, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he got recently promoted, so he's kind of like, I think he's like one below Kathleen Kennedy now. I think it's basically Kathleen Kennedy's like the head of the business side, and then Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are loosely looking over like the continued.
So I'm sure they're kind of looking and thinking, right, okay, this still is working, this still is fitting, so it's fine. So far what they've done, I've enjoyed, and that I know I said that the sequels aren't the best, but a lot of the series, I've enjoyed them all, and that. So keep doing this. I enjoyed Rebels. I've enjoyed Clone Wars so far. What I've seen,
and Bad Batch is really good as well. I wouldn't say it's quite as good as Rebels or Clone Wars, but it definitely has its moments. So
I mean, maybe I am a Star Wars apologist as well. I keep defending it all the time, but
I'm the same.
But I enjoy it.
Same.
I'm not ashamed to say that. I really enjoyed it. It takes me back to being, a little kid watching Star Wars and that, and as long as it keeps doing that, I'll keep watching it.
It's nice to feel excited about stuff again.
Yeah.
Even if these episodes of Acolyte haven't quite hit, it's nice to have something I'm really excited for. Like, I'm excited for House of the Dragon when that comes out, because it's a phenomenal show. But it's a different level of excitement. House of the Dragon is a big cinematic event. It's like a Christopher Nolan film. I get excited to watch it. I watch it and I'm done, and I don't really go back to it. Whereas Star Wars, it collects together. There's rewatchability. There is connective content, and also, obviously I read all the books and comics and all that kind of jazz. So for me, I'm like, this is my safety blanket. Star Wars is my main way of escapism. That's how I deal with a lot of stress of the world. Is I get to go to Star Wars, and where you're you're doing a lot of this stuff where you're getting to watch these amazing Star Wars shows that you've not seen before, some because they're new and live action, but some because they're animated, and you're starting to delve into some of the comics and stuff like that as well. And it's just nice because it's fun to go, I fancy a bit of Star Wars. And you go, there's so much to choose from. Do you want a romance novel? Go for Princess and the Scoundrel or The Courtship of Princess Leia. Do you want like a thriller? Go for Shadow of the Sith. Do you want like a really brutal dark side, like really big epic story? The Darth Bane trilogy. There's almost any genre that you'd want within the context of sci-fi fantasy that you can find. And it's in any format. There's manga, there's books, there's short stories, there's comics, there's live action, animation, short stories, there's, films. And that's what I like about it. I just get to consume as much or as little Star Wars as I want. And it's nice.
Yeah. Enjoy what you want to enjoy.
Amazing stuff. Well, we will wrap this up then. Obviously, people can find you on X at MaffUK78, but you've got a secret little project going on in the background with Mr. Tony Farina of Indie Comics Spotlight of Comics in Motion. So when that comes out, I'll put it in the description and stuff. Yeah. But we will do a Clone Wars. The next Clone Wars Conversations is going to be in early July, where we do the finale of Clone Wars Series 4. Which anyone who knows, and you're in the dark, and it's so excited to talk about that. And then by then, I imagine you'll be able to talk a little bit more about the stuff you've got with Tony. But obviously, you've done Back to the Filmography, a few episodes of that, and then there's the Jason Statham thing is starting to end, but I can't say what. But
can't say what it is yet.
Yeah,
we know
because we're special. But it's starting to end, so we're excited to see where that comes out. And I know a lot of us are excited of what's to come. And I was going to say, because you mentioned earlier about changing people's minds. I know you a lot of the time are quite positive on Back to the Filmography, and often you'll say things, and Jack's like, you know what? Fair play. Maybe I like the film a little bit better now. So I always love hearing your input on the stuff you do with Spider-Dan and the stuff you do with Jack on Back to the Filmography and a lot of the other Comics in Motion-y stuff you pop up with. For all listeners, Comics in Motion, the podcast. Because if you're watching on YouTube, you're like, what the hell is Comics in Motion? It's like, it's a podcast. Check it out. But is there anything I may have missed there?
I use Letterboxd as well. And all films that I go watch, I use Letterboxd.
Very exciting.
I keep trying to keep that up to date. In fact, we'll be going tomorrow morning to go watch Inside Out 2 with George.
It's out already. Oh my God.
I know.
It felt like there's no films for ages, and then all of a sudden there's just loads coming out because there's there's Deadpool 3, there's...
Next few weeks are kind of, I think, the Bikers the next week, and so the next few weeks there's kind of a film each week to go watch. I have the movie pass, and it's brilliant because I just, on a night time, once I'm off to bed, I'm off to pictures.
I used to do that, a couple of years back. Me and the guys had a couple. It's great fun. Well, with me, friends, please, if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, tell us what you thought. If you hated this episode of The Acolyte and you're not a bigot, please tell me what you think. Like, why did you not like the episode? I would really like to hear people's thoughts on this. A lot of people whose opinions I do respect really didn't like this episode. And I'd be interested to find out why. Have we already touched upon it? Is there something we've missed? Is there a big glaring obvious thing that's broken the canon that Maff and I have missed? Please tell us. But, check out the other Star Wars content I've done. I've interviewed several Star Wars authors, most recently Mike Chen. I did, Adam Christopher. I've done quite a few of the High Republic authors as well, who heavily influenced the production of The Acolyte, and Cal Naka, for example, the Wookiee Cavan Scott, who I've had on the show. He's written a one-shot comic just about Cal Naka, so I'm very excited to read that when that comes out. So there's Clone Wars Conversations every month. Maff, me and Dave, and occasionally Megan. We talk about collections of Clone Wars. We're making the episodes a lot more focused now. The first episode was all of Series 1 and then half of Series 2, and now we're focusing on arcs specifically, so we've got a lot more time to delve deep into those things. And then other stuff I've got going on. Subscribe. If you're listening on a podcast app, please share with your friends. Please review, and please subscribe to the feed and things. If you're on YouTube, again, like, share, talk, etc. And then find me on social media at Genuine Chit-Chat on Instagram, X, Facebook, TikTok, Threads. I post the same stuff basically all over them, apart from TikTok because it's British only video. But yeah, you can find me in any of those places. I like Star Wars a lot, as you've been able to tell by this content. And Maff and I have quite a few conversations about it, at least once a month. So it's all all good fun there. And yeah, I think that's probably just about it. So, friends, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, please, I really genuinely want to hear people's thoughts on this episode. Really do want to hear some criticism. I know Angry Andy, he's released a review of this and he really didn't like this, but I was like, I don't want to watch it until after, because he'll say stuff that I'll completely agree with that I haven't thought about, and then I'll just be saying his review. But check out Angry Andy reviews if you're on YouTube as well, because he does some really, really cool stuff. And he will be appearing on this weekly discussion show right near the very end as well. So good stuff coming there. But friends, thank you for tuning in as always. And, well, there's nothing else to say aside from, may the Force be with you.